Yeah, I'll get it.
Yeah. Okay. Call the order of Burnsville Town Council, November 30th. Call the order. I'll do a roll call to my right.
Justin Doyle.
Ruth Ann Moore.
James Ramel.
Andrew Greenwood.
Susie Falls.
Please stand for the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First order of business, council business.
I'll make a motion to keep the employee rates flat and have the town absorb the benefit increase for 2022.
Motion by Mrs. Qualls,
I'll second.
second by Mrs. Moore. All in favor, raise your right hand, say aye. Aye. And opposed? Okay. Electric, sewer, and stormwater bonds.
Afternoon. Scott Miller's here to bring the council up to speed on our bonds and the next step. Turn it over.
Thank you, Kevin. Good afternoon, everybody. We've got 3 utilities to go through, and then I'll give you a quick update on the water. Where we stand is that we've provided information to the underwriter, Stiefel. They have gone out and talked to their buyers and have received information back about potential interest rates for these transactions. And they've given us options both as going forward with a public market sale versus doing a private placement. And on all 3, the electric, sewer, and the storm, the private placement option looks to be a better scenario in terms of the interest rate. So I thought I'd just run through those with you real quickly. And then if you're comfortable with that, we can move forward and move those to closing yet this, in December. We're not quite to December yet, but get that done yet this year. So on the electric utility, we actually looked at 2 different options there, 20 years, a term of 20 years, and then also a shorter term of 15 years. And that shorter term looks to be the better option. A private placement rate in that scenario is about 2.3% versus 2.73 over a 20-year period. So that amount, that 2.3% is pretty close to where we had estimated the debt service to be, and leaves you in a position to do the majority of your other capital improvements that you want to do outside of the bond issue. So the recommendation on the electric utility is certainly to move forward with that 15-year private placement. And stop me as I go through this if there are any questions. On the electric, it's 15-year placement option is $2.8 million. Next is the sewage works. Papers here. Sewage works, and the placement is $7.2 million. We've got a private placement net interest rate of 2.45%. 15. I'm sorry, this is 20 years. Yeah, the others are 20 years.
You said private placement?
Private placement is 2.45%. That's the net interest cost. The all-in interest rate, 2.53 on a public market versus 2.67 on a private placement. Extremely close. So debt service is extremely it's within $7,000 of each other if we go public versus private. But if you go that public market now, especially with what we're seeing in the market, we run the risk of where are those rates really going to shake out. I should mention, I talked to Greg Clark at Stiefel right before coming down today, and because we got these rates 2 weeks ago, I think it was, when we had that call. And he said that as of right now, they don't know of any reason why they would be different than what we're talking about today. So we assume that these rates are still good. So again, on the sewer, 20 years, $7.2 million, 2.45%. Next one is stormwater, and electric and sewer are all new money. Stormwater is a refunding of your outstanding rural development bonds. That's about $1,680,000. Interest rate on that one, net interest cost is 2.68. Total interest cost, public market is 3.41, private placement 3.61. So again, the total cost is extremely close, but again, with this private placement, we know that's the rate. We can get into the market, get done, and get that transaction closed for you. Yeah, so the net interest cost, private placement rate is 2.68%. And if we look at an all-in cost, it's 3.41 on the public market versus 3.61 for the private placement. And that's about $2,600 difference in the maximum debt service payment.
What's our interest rate right now? Stormwater.
Right now, $4.5.
4.5?
Yeah.
4.5.
Final maturity on these is 2040 with the refunding. That's, if you recall, the way we structured that, the original maturity right now on the outstanding bonds goes to 2045. And as part of the refunding, we're taking off 5 years at the back end. So we don't have a whole lot of change in debt service in the early years, but we pay it off 5 years early. And you go from 4.5% down to 2.68. And that's actually, that's a pretty good rate. That was always going to be the most difficult one of these, just given the size of the utility. It's an extremely small utility, small revenue stream. So that's a pretty good outcome, I think, for the stormwater.
My question, going back to electric, you said 15-year, 2.3 public. Can we place those funds before the end of this fiscal, or is that one going to run into?
2.3 is private placement. Right now.
So private placement is 2.3, yeah,
That's private?
private placement.
Okay, what was public?
So, yeah, on
I
the
got it reversed. Okay.
So, yeah, on-
15-year and?
On the public, the all-in cost on the public on the electric for 15 years was 2.94 versus a private of 3.07. And then the net interest cost on the private is 2.3.
2.3. And that's
Assuming it's done by the end of the year.
That's 15 years. And yeah, that all three of those, if you want to go forward with those private placements, we would start going crazy and we'd get these closed by the end of the year.
We got to think about
If you need these, you probably need to do this.
it. Yeah, I'll do it eventually.
Go ahead,
I'll make a motion to approve the electric bonds at a 15-year private placement, 2.3%.
I have a motion by Mr. Doyle, a second by Ms. Walsh. All in favor, raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. None opposed?
Make a motion to approve the sewer bonds in the amount of $7.2 million and a 20-year private placement at 2.45%.
Motion by Mr. Doyle, a second.
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Walsh. All in favor, raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
None opposed?
Make a motion to approve the stormwater bonds in the amount of $1.68 million in a private placement transaction for 20 years at, you said it was 2.68%.
Got a motion by Mr. Doyle, second by Mr. Doyle. All in favor, raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries, none opposed.
Last thing real quick on the water, just an update, no action on this, but on the water, fantastic news. S&P came back and has released their rating report. They rated you at a AA minus, which is a really strong rating for a municipal utility. You should be very proud of that. It's really reflective of the financial strength of the utility and just the growth and development that's going on in the area and what S&P anticipates going forward. So that's great news. We're going to take that, and timing wise, that one we're looking at doing in January. And I think right now we're targeting a sale on January 12 and then a closing January 26. That gives us enough time to get those bonds closed, to get the money over to SRF, because part of that transaction is refinancing one of your outstanding SRF deals. And they've got payments coming due on February 1st. So all that timing should work out. So that's where we're at on that one. Great news so far. And look to have hopefully a good sale after the first of the year on that one.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve the easement acquisition for the trail project and authorize the council president to execute any documentation required to purchase the property.
I'll second.
Motion, Mr. Minister, by Ms. Wald, all in favor, raise your right hand. Say aye.
Aye.
None opposed.
Got one more, Mr. President? Make a motion to authorize the president to execute the purchase agreement for Stones Crossing Water properties and any other applicable documents necessary to effectuate the purchase of the property.
I'll second.
Motion, Mr. Green, second by Ms. Claus, all in favor, raise your right hand. Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. None opposed. That's everything.
That's it.
Okay. Under ordinances, establishing a wage and salary, we're gonna table this. HR is reviewing this for current salary ranges from equitability, so we'll deal that with next council. Ordinance 2126.
Adam?
Yeah, go ahead.
Good afternoon. Hope everyone had a nice holiday last week. Ordinance 2021-26 is related to the additional appropriations that were passed by motion directed for last council meeting related to the capital funding for the local sources of the police station. So we've revised those based on some direction, those amounts the last meeting. Based on the bid amounts, we reduced that amount down. So the third strategy, if you recall that from previous conversations, are still in place, now just at the lower funding amounts. Again, that's general fund, CCD, and the American Rescue Fund. Happy to take any questions now if you have them. Otherwise, my understanding is that action today completes the council's action. The next step, we'll work with the Clerk Treasurer's Department to notice the Department of Local Government Finance, get these administered budgetarily, and then ultimately your next meeting will likely come back and ask for a carryover to actually get them into next year for when payment is to be expected. Anyway, happy to take any questions.
Questions?
Very good, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Adam.
Good afternoon. I'm going to introduce Chuck Lehman of Lehman & Lehman. He has been working on a recreation impact fee study for the town. Both the Parks Board and Plan Commission have approved the resolutions supporting the documents, and he will present his information to you today.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Chuck Lehman with Lehman & Lehman. We were hired to work and update the Bargersville's recreation impact fee study. As Bethany had shared, we did present this to the Park Advisory Commission Board and along with the public hearing with the Plan Commission. And both of those, I think, received a favorable recommendation to the council. The presentation I have today will take about 20 minutes. I'll be happy to go through all of that, or just hit some highlights on that and stop along the way and answer any questions you may have. You have the complete study in the bound document before you, and the PowerPoint, which I have up on the screen, is in the stapled copy of that. So I'll do what's your pleasure. You want me to go through the whole thing and
Yeah, why don't you go ahead?
Okay, all right. Okay, good, thank you. Part of the advisory committee and part of the state statute is to form an advisory committee. And the advisory committee has to have a certain makeup that includes a real estate background, that of members of the building community and also the development community. The committee itself is noted up on the top portion of this screen, and then this staff and consultant are working with that was noted at the bottom. I'd just like to publicly thank that group for their participation in those meetings. The formula for the recreation impact fee is basically you determine the impact cost over a 10-year growth period based on some standards that have been established by the town and also by the committee and the recommendations. That impact cost minus any non-local revenues, and basically the non-local revenues would be donations. Impact deductions would be that if a bond issue, say, was going to be used for funding those current deficiencies, those would have to be discounted from the formula, which is what the impact deductions is all about. And then you take that number and divide it by the 10-year residential building permits projection for the town. Another way to look at this is the current graphic up in the upper left-hand corner. If that is your current status, where you have the current population, kind of a snapshot of today, and leveraging that against the built infrastructure for recreation, which is noted by the tree and the landscaping. That's balanced with the recreation standards for the community. In this illustration, it would illustrate that you have more population than you have recreation standards based on those, or recreation inventory based on those standards. And that wedge of orange would have to be funded outside of impact fees, and those would be noted as current deficiencies. In the same way, that 10-year forecast as relates to that 10-year population projection, that same recreation standards are used. You'll have more population as it grows. You may actually have more inventory that grows. But that out of balance portion there would represent current or future needs, which is a wedge of green. And that would be funded 100% by the recreation impact fee itself. The growth in Bargersville has been pretty substantial over the last several years. This is going back to the year 2000. The trend of that over the last several years, you can see the growth rate has been exponential over the last 4 or 5, or actually the last about 10 years of growth. And that was used as a point of history. We still went through and we did forecasting on that overall growth. So part of this residential growth projection, and again, I should state that this impact fee is related to residential growth, not commercial or industrial or anything to that regard. So this is the recreational aspect of that is for residents. We parcelized off the various parcels of land development potential within your planning jurisdictional area. We also took into account your existing developments and what build out capacity has in the next 10 years for those areas as well to figure out the forecast. And again, this is too small to see on the screen, but in the documentation, each of those parcels, We acknowledged what the acreage would be. We discounted 20% of that for road development, easements, and so on. And if there was any floodway or anything, we discounted that up as well. That information gave us what that developable acreage would be, and then based on the zoning, what that build out of residential development would be. And then in the right-hand side of this, we actually worked with the town and figuring out how much of that could be acknowledged as far as growth and build out over that next 10-year period. That information, along with the existing developments, which this table actually represents, applied and actually generated what that future forecast would be. So based on your current zoning, based on the parcels of land and the existing developments, the build-out capacity for the town, if everything was built out according to zoning and so on, would be a little over 28,000 people. In the next 10 years, we're forecasting that there would be a growth of about 5,600 people, and that would generate a 2030 total population of around 13 or 15,210. So that was how the development of population was forecasted. This table here looks at how that growth would actually just be distributed over that 10-year period. Typically, we have somewhat of a bell curve where we start off slow and build with that momentum. We determined that at this point, with the growth that the town is experiencing, it's more of a flatter growth, but overall, there would be a 4.75 annual growth plan over that 10-year period. The park acreage and park inventory of the existing property, right now with your existing park land, the land of both development and non-developed or undeveloped park acreage, along with the land that comprises the trails and pathways, the town has a total of just under 30 acres of park acreage for that. We looked at also park infrastructure as it relates to like ball fields and basketball courts and so on. And we acknowledge what was part of the town's system. We also acknowledge what's available within the school area and other recreational providers. So this table actually acknowledges those various pieces of inventory. We discussed with the committee and with the town the aspect of that community level of service, and that would be like how many acres per 1,000 people the municipality would want to have. This table here actually represents several different communities standards throughout. This was used not as, well, we want to be like Noblesville, or we want to be like Plainfield or so on, but it was just one of acknowledging what are those standards in other communities and what they are using for their level of service. One of the things and one of the major changes that we had versus the last impact fee study, if you recall, that last impact fee study looked at the land needs, and again, we acknowledged the fact that there wasn't enough acres per 1,000 people that was the desired level of service. We moved that dial to 5 acres per 1,000 people last time, and that's what was part of your current impact fee ordinance. This update, the committee felt and moved that to an 8 acre per 1,000 acres standard. And as you can see, I'm going to have to, my eyes are not that good. I'm going to pull this up on my screen here. What that is showing in the bottom portion is that you would have a current at that 8 acres per 1,000, you would have a current a deficiency of about a little over 51 acres of land. That is part of your current deficiency. But again, with that population growth, a projection for 2030, there would be an additional need of 92 acres, or a little over 92 acres of land. That would bring that up to that 8 acres per 1,000 standard. Again, a good example of this is that 51 acres would have to be funded outside of the use of impact fees, where that 92 acres can be used totally from impact fees. Similarly, we did this for there's about 35 different recreational components. That was part of that analysis, and that's what this table represents. You'll see the last two lines in this table, trails and also acreage, are highlighted in gray. Those were the same two components that were used in the last, or your current impact fee ordinance. The recommendation is to use those same two infrastructure components in this update study as well. So again, what the recreation impact fee is looking at is using it for trails and also park acreage. Facility needs, we looked at each of those various components of what the cost of those facilities would be, what that information, I'm sorry about the graphics on the screen, didn't translate very well. But it basically looked at those various elements throughout that standard. One thing on the trails component, the last time we studied this, the last plan, we had a standard of 1 mile of trail for every 2,000 people. This update, we moved that dial to 1 mile of trail for every 1,750 people. We applied kind of what we're calling a recreational scenario, looking at the various ratios of what that current efficiency is versus that of the municipality's portion of that. And this was a table that represented that. Basically, this is kind of a summary of those last two slides. So basically what you're looking at on this slide is the impact of the trails and also the park acreage. There would be a current deficiency of $1.67 million and a future need of almost $3.4 million. In a rough status, this would give you a rough gross amount of an impact fee of $1,630. That is rough because it hasn't had any deductions applied to that. What we looked at is how that deficiency funding would be taken into account. We looked at 4 different areas of funding of that current deficiency. First one being grants, the other would be in park capital improvement budget, the town economic development fund, and also TIF funding was considered as part of that current deficiency funding source. As I said, the impact deductions would be as part of that overall formula. Again, anything that would pull property tax money to be funded in some of these sources would have to be figured and discounted upfront. So again, the park capital improvement budget, the town's economic development fund are 2 areas that are drawn from property taxes. So those elements would have to be factored in and discounted. So this table is an analysis of that and when those would actually happen. Bottom line is on this slide, it represents that discount. There is an impact deduction of $103,000 that would have to be taken off the impact cost. So that adjusted impact amount would be $3.295 million. You take that number and divide it by the number of residential building permits over that 10-year period. It comes up with a projected impact cost of $1,580. This was a table that just represented what are some of the current or almost current impact fees from various municipalities throughout the state. That some of these we have not been involved in, many of them we have. I think the highest one right now within the state is Carmel, which is just under $3,000 per residential unit. Part of the recommendation summary is that there would be one impact fee zone, which is what you had the last time. The recreation components would be the A priorities, which were the trails and park land. The current deficiencies was acknowledged at 1.7 or 673 million. The future needs was 3.295. recommended impact fee would be $1,580. There was a recommendation that was supported by the committee, by the Park Advisory Commission, and also the Plan Commission to apply an annual inflation factor to cover the cost of inflation, cost of construction and so on, of 3%. And that would be adjusted annually with I think that's how the ordinance is drafted. And that there would be, again, the recommendation is to apply the housing equivalent option. For example, a one-bedroom apartment would be a percentage of that single-family amount. And that's similar to what your current zone or your current ordinance actually reads. And that the last recommendation is that this be reported on an annual basis of what was brought in and also what was generated as far as expenditures. I don't know, I think that was it. So I'd be happy to answer any questions. It's a lot of data.
Can you expand on that housing, the optional housing equivalents and why that was done previously? And if there's any studies that show the use of a apartment dweller compared to a residential dwelling?
And again, you can't see it.
Discounting for multiple.
Sure. And again, this is an option that some communities have opted to use and others have opted not to. Basically, the forecast is looking at a single family residence as the baseline on that. The rationale behind this is that if you have a one bedroom apartment, you're probably not going to have the same number of occupants as you would in a single family residence. So that, and I think this recommendation was looking at a 65% of that total single family would be a one bedroom apartment. Two bedroom would be up a little bit higher, three bedroom and so on. So the rationale is that the number of occupants of these residences are going to be the users of the infrastructure that you're applying for this recreational standard.
Are there any studies or anything that would say that a multifamily resident utilizes public parks and trails more so than an individual residence where they have their own yard and their own space?
I'm not aware if there is a study of that, and if there is, if it's been updated and so on. Some of this stuff with COVID and being locked down, it's having a major impact on those types of analysis.
Everyone's getting out.
Yeah, exactly. And I know.
Are the other communities, you said that other communities do a variety of different things, but as a whole, is there a majority of the communities that do just a standard flat fee?
That is the standard that usually you just go with one at this point. For example, this analysis and meeting the needs of that, there's no way we could factor in what would be the discounts, of applying that housing, allowance or housing equivalent in this study. So it is one that, as I said, most of them just keep a basic fee, and that's what's used.
Flat fee for every dwelling.
Every dwelling. Yep.
And then is this the, this is to help educate, that I'm not aware, but this is only on building permits for residential or multifamily, correct? So a commercial building would not pay park impact fee, correct?
That's correct. And again, it does not apply to someone getting a building permit to add on to their home. It's basically a new construction, and it's a one-time fee. And again, this is just the introduction presentation of this.
Is it pretty common, the inflation factor is pretty common, is it ever the greater of like a percentage and the consumer price inflation measure, so that like right now, where inflation is 5 to 6%, so we would actually be giving a discount now if we're only at 3?
Yeah, exactly. And there's been some in your study, and I don't, you have a copy of I've got a draft of it here. and I'll try to find the page. On page 34 of the bound copy, there is basically the gross domestic product is an element that the Indianapolis MPO studies. And that was a graphic that went back to 2015, but that was, it was as high as over 5% back in 2001. 2015, it was 4%. And I'm sure it's the data has been changed, exponentially over the last several years. Some communities in their ordinance, they acknowledge the fact that there will be an adjustment, and it could be based on a known quantity like this here, rather than just say it's going to be 3% each and every year, which may cover, you may not cover the actual expenditures. The ordinance could be written in such a way that you use a factor like this here that would be part of that adjustment rationale.
Yeah.
Yep. I'll be back.
Thank you.
Sure thing. Thank you.
And is on down from I1 to C3.
Good afternoon. So this is the first reading for ordinance 2021-23, which is a request to amend the zoning map from I1 to C3 general commercial. This is 4.69 acres plus or minus, located south of 2 Cent Road along 135. This was introduced to council on November 9th and did receive a favorable recommendation from Planning Commission on October 18th. I believe the petitioner here, sitting right in front, I missed him. The petitioner is here with the presentation if you'd like.
Thank you. For the record, Eric Prime, Van Baylor Law Firm, on behalf of the petitioner, Good Shepherd Veterinary Services. This first slide will give you a quick overview of the area that we're discussing. Good Shepherd's current facility is just south of the intersection of 144 and 135. It's the highlighted box at the top of the slide there. Sits right next door to the Mexican restaurant and a little white, what used to be a house, I guess. Dr. Couch and his practice has expanded over the years, and they need more room. They were actually looking at trying to level that facility and build a new one on that lot, and the engineering just didn't work out. So they actually purchased just shy of 4.69 acres just south of 2 Cent Road, the area that's outlined in the blue dots. And so what he's planning to do is to be able to build a brand new, nice veterinary clinic on that property and subdivide it into 2 additional lots. Head here, whoops, wrong direction. There we go. Sorry, that's highlighting the spot that we're talking about. And then going backwards here. Some technical difficulties. There we go. So this is what the concept plan would be. His clinic would be on the back and furthest away from 135. There would be 2 outlots available for future commercial development in the front. That area in your current, actually in the future land use map, is designated as an arterial corridor overlay. And as you can see in the lower right-hand corner of the box there in your comprehensive plan, it indicates that those areas should include pockets of neighborhood commercial area. And so we think this fits in perfectly with what the comprehensive plan had indicated for that area. This is just the narrative that goes with what I've been discussing. Currently, this is zoned I1. We're seeking to rezone to C3 to allow for this. It actually is not a permitted use in the industrial zone. And given what would be left of the frontage on 135, we also think that would be more akin to a commercial use rather than industrial at that point. And in fact, we're bordered on the south by Napa Auto Parts and an outdoor shop. So it's sort of a little commercial node anyway. So we think this is a good use for the town to take on, and certainly would help spur development in that area that's sat vacant for quite a while. There we go. In connection with this rezoning, we are willing to go with the project, and those commitments included a list of uses that would be excluded. And in taking this before the Plan Commission, they actually asked us to add 3 additional excluded uses, which we then did add as well. So those are in the new version. And I should mention this was favorably received by staff. They recommended a favorable recommendation. Plan Commission voted unanimously favorably to forward that recommendation to you with these commitments. In addition to the excluded uses, there is a commitment as well, as long as NDOT approves it, to run a trail along 135 down the north-south property line to property line that would connect with a trail that I think was already a commitment for the folks north of 2 Cent Road that are doing the multi-use development there. So that would all connect through. And that's about it. If you have questions, happy to answer them. But it's a pretty straightforward situation. You've got a long-term corporate citizen in the town who wants to better his setup, and he couldn't do it on his existing property. So this makes good sense, and then also will provide 2 additional building lots for future commercial growth. He wanted to already be breaking ground if he could. So as soon as he can get approvals and get moving, he'll submit. I think it has to be, this was platted as an industrial park. So I think he may need to do a replat. We'll talk to staff about that. But yeah, he wants to get going as soon as possible.
So the frontage on 135, where's the storefront? I'm looking at this. It just looks, so you're going to access the road that's already there?
There is already a road cut on 135. Yeah, there would just be a drive coming back from that road cut that would allow access to all 3 of those lots.
And would the outlots be turned to 135? If any kind of building structures? I just see what I'm talking about. If that's back here, that's the access road. Right. Would it be?
Well, I think I know what you're saying. You made maybe the very fronted,
The front
lot
135.
probably
What
would
is that?
it would probably face the road, but you'd be coming in from the side, from the north side of the building.
It would need to have 2 front-sided architecture.
Yeah, that's
because it would face called the frontage road that gets put in, and then 135 also. At least the farthest line.
That was my question on the side. Right. to Planning Commission. Any other questions, comments, motions?
I move to approve ordinance 2021-23, amending the zoning map from I-1 to C3.
I'll second.
A motion by Mr. Royal, second by Ms. Bowles. All in favor, raise your right hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. None opposed. Thank you. Thank you. Water revenue bonds, reimbursed expenditures.
Yeah, the resolution before you is just a reimbursement resolution. Because we're not going to have the sale and closing of the water bonds until January, we want to get that in place because we have an opportunity to purchase the land yet this year, but to do that and have it reimbursed through the bond proceeds, we need to have this resolution in place. So it's just really an opportunity to move forward and get the land secured now, but have that cost paid through the bond issue as originally intended.
Dollar amount.
There probably isn't. I actually haven't read or seen the resolution itself. There's probably not a dollar amount. It really, all it says is that if the
Maximum of the 28.5.
yeah, if the council incurs costs related to the project, that your intent is to reimburse yourself from the proceeds once the bonds are sold.
Well, we're making it. It's a resolution that allows them to reimburse for the project. I guess it's up to 25 million. Yeah. Okay. I'll make a motion to approve the resolution 2021-13, allowing for reimbursement for expenditures for the water revenue bonds.
Motion by Mr. Greenwood, second by Ms. Moore. All in favor, raise your right hand, say aye. Aye.
There is just a typo on section 1. It says amount not to exceed, and it just says 28. There's needs to be a dollar sign in front of that. So
Okay.
just like-
Has everybody had a chance to look at the meeting minutes from November 9th? Any corrections or motions?
Make a motion to approve the meeting minutes for the November 9th, 2021.
Okay, a motion, Ms. Moore.
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Green. All in favor, raise your right hand, say aye. Aye. One abstention, Ms. Claus. She abstained. Wasn't here.
I wasn't here.
Just utility budgets, I just think that's for review. Any questions on that? Okay, moving along. Has everybody had a chance to look at the claims? Is there any questions for the claims? Okay. Motion?
Move to approve the claims as submitted.
I have a motion by Mr. Malone,
Second.
second by Ms. Moore, all in favor. Raise your right hand, say aye.
Aye.
None opposed? Okay. Thank you. Zach? Everett Park update. 11.
Good afternoon. So we have now had 2 meetings of the steering committee for Capital Park. During the last meeting, we kind of discussed changing the layout of the site. The parking, we kind of were keeping in the same configuration. We think that still works with the overall master plan, but we kind of took the elements in this activation phase, as we're calling it, and kind of moved them more towards the center of the site to make them a focal point, and then switch the community building kind of to the northwest. Since the activation phase is kind of everybody's focus right now, we wanted to kind of make that the focus of the park, just in case the community building doesn't get built for a while. It doesn't look, like we have a hole in the park and look out of place. So we're still leaving room for a building, if like the programming needs and the community size kind of comes together on what they need for that building in the future. There's still room for that there. But in the meantime, the park would function better kind of with the layout that we have. So the current layout, we got rid of the trail along the east side, which I know some people wanted to get rid of that. So this also moves the community building away from the new subdivision, which we've already heard some grumblings about that being close and noise and some of that as well. So it's kind of the update so far. I know we're meeting again on December 16th. We hope to have some kind of better costs in place, cost estimate, kind of know where we're going. There's been some talk of trying to combine phase 1 and phase 2 and bid them together. The plan right now is to kind of do phase 1 in January and phase 2 in July and have everything wrapped up by the end of next year. But we're looking at the possibility of maybe doing both those phases and bidding in April when it's close to when the contractor would actually be constructing it. I think right now, given the bid environment, the closer we can get the bids to the start of construction, the better numbers. Any other questions or?
Thanks for the update, we appreciate it.
No problem.
Adam?
All right. So the next item that we have today is regarding final 2021 budget amendments. Am I in the right section? Want to make sure I have the agenda right in front of me.
This is the appropriation.
To the impact fee.
Yes, okay, I just want to make sure, I just want to make sure, apologies. Yep, so we have, this was originally batched as part of the motions that were going to come before you at the last meeting, but there was some coordination, so we pulled that to a side. So very similar to how we did the last meeting with regards to asking for a motion first for the additional appropriation in preparation to direct staff to draft the additional appropriation for the Park Plaza acquisition. Wanted to come before you tonight, present, or this afternoon, present the information, as well as there's actually a budgetary amendment that we've also reviewed that we'd like to get incorporated into that just for year-end housekeeping as well. So for the land acquisition for the park, from the Park Impact Fee Fund appropriation, be an appropriation from cash to the land acquisition capital account in the amount of $116,500. In addition to that, when we're reviewing the budgetary status for that fund, it's actually that account, when you incorporate the encumbrances for contracts that have already been approved, that account's actually negative budgetary status currently. So in order to be able to appropriate those contracts and then at your next meeting be able to carry those over, we would also ask for an additional $50,000 into that same account, same fund, in order to clean up that issue, so that when we do your carryovers, we're not starting off next year chasing contracts that are approved this year. Those have to do with the Park Impact Fee study, and then there was one other project earlier approved, I can't remember off the top of my head, that accumulated to that $48,000, $300 negative variance that you'll see on your budget reports. So we've run ahead and rounded that up to $50,000 in just whole dollars. The total additional appropriation that we will need to fund 454, which is the Park Impact Fee Fund, is $166,500, with $116,500 of that going to the land account and $50,000 going to the miscellaneous expenditure account.
So this is in background, right? So originally this was gonna be a part of the redevelopment commission and their project, and they were gonna fund it with the way the Park Impact Fee works. And the money that we get from that, they can only be used for certain expenditures, which one of them is purchase the parkland, which this is. So it went from, we signed it over to the RDC, they just signed it back, now we have to shuffle some money around. And that's why Adam's here today, explaining that, so just background for those trying to keep score.
So I know there's no ordinance for you, so tonight all we would need is or this afternoon, we keep just a motion directing staff if you want to proceed with that additional appropriation or not. And then we'll prepare that, and then obviously just from a practical standpoint, that'll be the final additional appropriation amendment for the year. And what we're following up in is at your next December meeting, we plan to present a carryover list, which you'll see some of this back again. Once those appropriations are approved and in the actual ledger, we'll ask for a carryover of those amounts to be carried over into next year. This project will be one of those. So you'll be appropriating it this year with the intent the expense might not be recognized until the following year, at least for some.
Two separate motions.
Motions. And then do we need to make a motion to expend the funds for the purchase? Also,
No, I mean, you've already approved the purchase, it's kind of a bad idea.
so three,
We got Ian, for sale, I can sign closing.
sure. Why don't we start with the, I'll make a motion to approve an appropriation of $166,500 from
The Fund 454.
Fund 454.
I'll second.
A motion by Mr. Freeman, second by Ms. Combs. All in favor, raise your right hand. Say aye.
Aye.
None opposed?
Make another motion that we appropriate $116,500 from the Park Impact Fee Fund cash to cap land acquisition account.
I'll second.
A motion and a second. All in favor, raise your right hand. Say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. None opposed?
Third motion, here that we will approve the purchase of the Park Plaza land and authorize town council president to execute any documents to effectuate that purchase.
Second.
Motion, Mr. Freeman, second by Ms. Combs. All in favor, raise your right hand. Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. None opposed?
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you very much. I'll
Thank you, Adam.
see you at your next meeting.
All right, Joe.
Good afternoon again. As we come up on 3 to 4 years since a lot of these subdivisions in town have started, we are seeing expiring maintenance bonds for the work that's been done. First item I have is a release of maintenance bonds that have expired, including those for Saddle Club Section 1A, Saddle Club Section 1B, Saddle Club Section 2, and Shadowwood Section 2A. All those have expired between September 2019 and October 2021.
David, we need 4 motions.
If you name them all, I think
There is one additional in your packet. We're recommending we wait to release that one.
Move to approve the release of expired subdivision bonds, Saddle Club Section 1A, Saddle Club Section 1B, Saddle Club Section 2, and Shadowwood Section 2A.
By Mr. Doyle. Second by Ms. Combs. All in favor, raise your right hand. Say aye. Aye. None opposed?
All right, next item is the release of subdivision maintenance bonds. We have had the opportunity to inspect these sections, which is Aberdeen Section 1 and Shadowwood Section 2B. These actually expired earlier this week, but we did have the opportunity to perform those inspections and get any corrections addressed before this afternoon's meeting. So staff would recommend council release the maintenance bonds for Aberdeen Section 1 and Shadowwood Section 2B.
Make a motion to release the subdivision maintenance bonds for Aberdeen Section 1 and Shadowwood Section 2B.
Motion by Mrs. Moore. A second. Second by Ms. Combs. All in favor, raise your right hand. Say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
All right, next item, to go along with my theme of maintenance bonds, are the maintenance bonds for Morningside Section 1A and 1B. Staff did have the opportunity to walk this section with the developer, identified some curbing and sidewalk, public walking corrections or repairs that needed to be made. So at this time, staff is recommending council release the maintenance bonds for everything but curbs. There's currently a bond for curbs in the amount of $32,596. So release the bonds for the asphalt path and road, sanitary sewer, storm sewer, and water distribution.
Make a motion to approve the release of the maintenance bond from what is in section 1A and 1B for asphalt path and road, sanitary sewer, storm sewer, and water distribution only.
Motion by Mr. Doyle,
I'll second.
second by Ms. Moore. All in favor, raise your hand. Say aye.
Aye.
None opposed.
We did have one more item. I think that's in the very last item in your packet on the SharePoint. We did get a request yesterday from Lennar, developer of Morningside. They're currently under construction in section 7. A sub-base proof roll on the roadways yesterday. They're requesting to modify the town's roadway cross-section. Typically, we require 1.5 inches of asphalt surface. They're proposing a 2-inch asphalt surface and a reduction of the base stone by 1/2 inch. General rule on that is 1 inch of surface is worth 2 inches of stone in a road section. They're also requesting we waive part of our standard 1.06D, which requires ambient temperature of 40 degrees and rising on pavement. And they're requesting to follow NDOT standard specification 402, which permits temperatures of 32 degrees and rising with a 2-inch or greater asphalt. I have spoken with Roy regarding this. He's in agreement that this is an acceptable pavement section and standard to follow.
Our engineer's okay with this.
Yeah, the NDOT spec lowers the temperature with a thicker layer of asphalt, going from the 1.5 to 2 inch lowers that temperature. I believe the petitioner, Neil Van Vries, is here with Lennar. Petitioners also offered to pave same day as the intermediate course, so the surface temperature would be higher. Basically, their goal was to be under asphalt this year.
And they were lowering the stone requirement for 2 inch. Did you say that?
Yeah, I believe our stone requirement currently is 8 inches. So they're proposing a 2-inch surface and a 7.5 inch stone, as opposed to a 1.5 inch surface and an 8-inch stone.
Talk to Roy about that also.
Yes. Like I said, general rule as far as road cross section strength is 1 inch of asphalt is worth 2 inches of stone.
Okay,
So in the end, we're going to get a stronger road section.
Thursday, it'll be 60s.
Proof roll was fairly successful. I think we have identified 5, 6 soft spots that need to be addressed prior to pavement. I would anticipate that getting done probably before the week's over.
It's already fixed.
It's already fixed.
32 and rising.
32 and rising, yeah. At this point, with the sub base being lined and stabilized, I'm not an engineer, but it was limed. If that were to sit over the winter, we'd probably lose that road base.
I'll make a motion to allow the modification of our local 1 pavement section from Morningside to section 7.
Motion by Mr. Greenwood,
I'll second.
second by Mr. Doyle. All in favor, raise your right hand. Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. None opposed.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. All right, Mr. Bertram. With the walk-on. You Joe.
Had to walk on, sorry.
I know you don't like that. I don't either, but we got, trying to order some equipment for the cars. They're supposed to be here this summer. ERS radio, the people we get our radios from, the APX 5, it used to get 5,000, now it's 4,500. Is 4 to 6 weeks out. They have one in stock. I just want to buy it so we don't have to wait 4 to 6 weeks next month.
Yeah.
And it's 3274.14. It's the in-car 800 radio that is in all of our cars.
Is this the radio that is gonna change? Or isn't there something going on with the radios? I read somewhere. There's like a standard, it might not be this, but there's some standard on the radios that everyone's having to go to, all the municipalities, all the.
We've been on that for a while. I can't remember what it's called. I know what you're talking about. But it's the type of frequency that.
There's only like Motorola, like the only one that makes it.
Yeah, now you can get Kenwood. Kenwood has kind of opened that up. That was 10 years. Motorola had it for 10 years and nobody else could do anything with it. And now it's starting to open up.
Is there anything coming down the pipe is there like
Yeah, you can get a Kenwood now. I priced the Kenwood. Here's the problem. We have all Motorola's. So all of our cars have the Motorola's, but if I go with a Kenwood, it is cheaper. I can get a Kenwood for $28. But for $400,
I was worried about the frequency, about having to replace it later on.
I had read somewhere where some other jurisdictions that were having to get authorized to spend like $100,000 to replace, to go to a new radio frequency. Have you heard anything about that?
But this is only.
This might not.
This is only news. I mean, this is fairly new, so I don't know what in the world we'd be doing. I haven't heard anything about that with us.
Okay.
We just bought, as a matter of fact, the sheriff's department, well, I say it's sheriff's department, it's the county sheriff's department's kind of facilitated it, buying VHS backup radios for all of the cars. So we just got those from the county recently. So I would have thought if there was some change in the works, we wouldn't have done all that.
Okay.
I hope not. I don't want to change. I don't need the changes of that. That's a lot of money. As you can see, that's the price for one radio.
Yeah, I read that there was like a few jurisdictions that were having to do all of their radios.
Oh, that would be a nightmare.
Right. That's why I'm bringing it up.
Yeah, that would
It wasn't like what you said. These aren't cheap. It's not a.
No, they are not cheap.
Kids radio.
No. But they're pretty tough. We have some Motorola's that we've had for more than 10 years. Coming up on 10 years anyway, so they're pretty tough.
It was
Some digital trunking type thing or
I
something.
don't know if it was like a standard one that you had to have that spoke to the. It has nothing to do with this PO request, however. Well, I'm just asking, because.
Yeah, I hope not. I haven't heard that.
I went, it was big dollars. It was like $100,000 expenditure for like 20 radios.
That sounds like what we did as a county and as a part of the state about 10 years ago. We switched to this whole system. Maybe it's somebody that hadn't switched and they're having to switch.
They didn't update or anything like that.
If they do it, it's all still the same digital trunking system that be programmed. And we went through a change on our handheld radios. They were 10 years old, close to, and some of the older ones couldn't be updated to the new frequency types. And we had to upgrade those, but we'd done that a while ago. So we've kind of gotten rid of all those radios. They were the handheld radios, not the big in-car radios.
Yeah.
But I'd just like to get this in our hands before we get a 4 to 6 week hold on them, and then we can't get them for the new cars. We have one that's a takeout from an old car, and we just need the other one for the other car when it gets here. And it's over my $2,000 limit.
It's in your budget though, right?
Yeah, it is. It's operating. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm done. Yeah, I'm motion to approve the PO for $3,000, to not to exceed $3,275.
Okay, motion by
I'll
Mr. Green,
second.
Second by Ms. Pauls, all in favor, raise your right hand. Say
Aye. Excellent. Thank you. And sorry again for the walk on.
Well, just in case.
Yeah. That concludes, I think we're, oh, Devin, you got something?
Bottle of water getting through this.
We gotta have Jack to get us.
Okay, the first item I have for you today is our system of development charges for water meters. We've had some discussion on that, and council had some questions about our surrounding utility companies on when's the last time that they went through a rate process. So Citizens was April 22nd of 2016, and Indiana American was July of 2019. So that's the last time that they went through and established their rates.
Say that again, Kevin, sorry.
Yep, Citizens is April 22nd of 2016. And it is July 1st of 2019.
So this went back to, I think this got presented at the last council meeting.
Yeah.
And you guys were, it was just the three of us, and it was the decision on which option to go with for the meter charges. And we asked some additional clarification because, you know, we're seeing these numbers from these other groups, but they haven't been, one's 5 years old, the other one's 2 years old. You know, and pricing and inflation's not down. So, right, so I think we still need to make a decision on which track we want to go with those SDC fees.
Scott, do you have any further on? Scott is still here if we have questions. So basically, we choose the 5/8.
Is that on SharePoint for everyone? Yes. So it starts at the 5/8 and then ramps up from there. And I think what we talked about was on the 8-inch meter size. What we had previously adopted was not, it was not in market. And so, you know, what should we go to? I have circled the one right in the middle, which would be 1,500 on the 5/8, and then it works its way up.
Now that we've got the rate studies, I'd be comfortable with that. Does anybody else have any questions?
I'll make a motion that we adjust our system development charges and fees for the water meters to the option with the 5/8 meter size is $1,500, going all the way up to the 8-inch meter size being $120,000.
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Hamer, second by Ms. Pauls. All in favor, raise your right hand, say aye. Aye. Motion carries, none opposed.
Scott? Great. Thank you. The next item is related to our capital improvement plans. We're looking at some of our older subdivisions for reinvesting in the infrastructure. And we have a quick little presentation here from Clark Dietz, and they're going to come up and kind of give you a quick high-level overview of this project. We'll just try it.
Thank you. I'm John Duffick from Clark Dietz. Real quick, if you aren't familiar with Clark Dietz, we're a multidisciplinary firm located in Indiana, Kentucky, Illinois, and Wisconsin. We do electrical, mechanical, roads, structural, and then water, wastewater, and stormwater, which is my area of experience, which leads me to the segue to water main replacement, design, bid and C services that we've provided an agreement to Kevin for consideration. It's for the Hendricks neighborhood, which is along the north side of Smith Valley Road, east of 135. And that's the bulk of the work is in the Hendricks neighborhood, but there's also some additional various locations of work along Smith Valley Road. This is the neighborhood kind of showing the scope of the work. A lot of the lines that are there are 2-inch, 4-inch, and 6-inch cast iron water mains. Like you said, they're about 50 years old, something like that. So they're due for replacement. There's also a cast iron line along the north side of Smith Valley Road. It's I don't know if you can see those little X's on there, but that is the 6-inch on the north side that would be abandoned. The kind of purplish, pinkish lines are the existing lines that would be replaced, probably on the same side of the road. Those kind of details haven't been decided on yet. And then since the 6-inch line on the north side will be gone, we would likely connect across to the south side of Smith Valley Road so that the proposed lines are looped for better pressure. And that's what those red clouded areas represent.
Where are those crossroads on this?
What's the closest north-south main artery?
So you got 135 and Smith Valley Road,
Yeah.
and run east about
East, okay.
East, it's east.
maybe 3 miles or so.
Yeah.
That little Walker farm there. Does it-
Walker's a little bit further east of there.
Okay.
I'm just trying to get
And that's the north side of stuff.
North side of Smith Valley, yes. Yeah. This is the rest of the project. You can see 135 on the far left side. And the slide I was just showing is to the right of this slide. It's the next subdivision to the right there. So there'd be several locations along Smith Valley Road where we just need to connect lines across from the north side to the south side so that there's looping and better pressure. And that's pretty much it along this area. I assume we'll be looking at crossing under 135, not open cut, since it is such a busy road. But very similar thing, issue here, old cast iron lines that need to be replaced. The agreement that we've submitted for consideration includes design, assistance with bidding, and then assistance during construction. We do have some milestones in there, 50%, 95%, and then bid ready. Fairly quick schedule there. Our agreement has a proposed compensation for design and bidding of $69,400, a lump sum amount, and then hourly not to exceed amount of $10,530 during construction engineering or construction. So that's it for my presentation. I don't know if you have any questions, or I do have copies of this if you want more paper.
What's the anticipated full timeline for this?
You want to answer that? Or?
Should be done.
Right, so we're looking at 2023 for the project. Depending on how other projects bid that are currently in the works, we might be able to move this up, depending on funding from state, local, federal, that may come available to the town.
Okay.
We might push this up. Our goal is to get several projects shovel-ready, if you will, as funds become available.
You have an estimated cost for, not for, you have design, right? But what's the estimated project cost?
We haven't got that far into it yet. It's a little over a mile of new water main. I hesitate to come up with a number on the top of my head at this point. The crossings under the roads adds a little bit extra to it. The neighborhood water main work should be fairly straightforward. But yeah, haven't got that far yet with it.
Are we in easements? Are we in right of way?
We would do everything possible to stay in the right of way.
Where they are now.
Or
We're gonna have to.
the majority were within the line.
So due to the age of the mains and potential age of the easements that may have been drafted back a long time ago, we've got to do a little homework. to match up potential easements with property owners. The descriptions back then were not the best. So we're still looking into that, but I don't anticipate large road projects in this area. So if we can be in right of way, we will, because I think the risk for the utility is probably pretty low. That they're going to expand, the roads in the neighborhood.
So we
But we
have
don't
to
take any.
acquire easements, then we're gonna have another addition to this then?
If we have to purchase easements, it could be an additional expense for that, but at this time, we're not sure what that's going to be.
It's not included in this proposal.
And you gotta design it first and find easements.
I'll make a motion to approve Clark Dietz for the engineering services for the Hendricks water main improvements. And let's see, and then also for the president to sign the agreement not to exceed $79,900.
Motion by Ms. Qualls. Second by Ms. Moore. All in favor, raise your right hand, say aye. Aye.
Thank you.
None opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anybody want? The next item is website redesign. This is mainly to get started on the content of our website, not necessarily the logos or the flashy portions of a website, but just to get started on the actual content and working with department heads and department managers on this project. So we felt that Revise was, I think we interviewed 6+ firms. Revise currently is under contract with the town for break fix and keep our existing site up and running. Kara has done a great job in working with these vendors and keeping this moving along and keeping us on task with this. So we wanted to bring this to council for consideration today to see if we can engage with Revise for the actual overhaul of our website. It was myself, Kara, and who else did we have?
Chelsea Fenmore was on it and Julie.
Chelsea and Julie.
Other questions? Is there timelines on some of this? On the contract, I know it's lengthy here.
Let's see. A pretty lengthy project. I was thinking.
It says 1 year.
Right, I was thinking 9 months or so. I mean, it's quite intensive.
And this is everything from functionality to design.
How will this work?
How will this work with rebranding?
That's what I
I'm
was
wondering.
gonna
Have
ask.
you
So-
talked to Julie about this?
So Kara has spoke with Revise about how does this work with the rebrand vendor, and their point was, let's start on the actual content of the website, and depending on how the rebranding of the town shakes out, then they can incorporate that. So whether it's colors or logos, pictures, things of that nature, would be actually plugged in last. We would work on more, what does a resident want to see? What does a utility customer want to see from function? What works, what doesn't work? The site we're currently on, I believe, was done in 2012 or later, or older potentially. So I myself have not spoke to Julie about it. I'm not sure if Kara has, shaking her head no. So current discussions have just been work on the inside meat and potatoes of the website, if you will, and then work with rebranding once that is decided on like I said, the landscape, I guess, if you will. I'm not familiar with the rebranding contract, so I don't know what was included or not included with that project.
I think the rough timeline is first to the second quarter.
Well, we've already got February when there's
Right.
coming here.
Yeah. So, I mean, from a timing perspective, they just need to make sure if we approve this, that everyone needs to talk,
Right.
right? And there needs to be coordination. It's within your budget, right?
Does this mention rebranding within the contract? Because should
It
we,
does not.
should we have that, should they add that?
Well, they're not able to. They're not.
They have to integrate with it though, is all I'm saying, is that, and it's not here on the contract, I'm just,
It's-
David.
review this.
I don't believe so.
Why don't we,
yeah, I think,
why don't we table it, have David review it, and then talk with Julie about coordinating with the, Chandler Things.
Okay.
Rebranding company, and make sure that we have
Just
everything.
some of the other copy for the boards, you know,
You don't
Yeah,
want
I-
to duplicate services.
Yeah, that's the big thing, is
Yeah.
that coordinating. I understand what he's saying, that, you know, that you have a lot of work that has to be done on a website that doesn't matter what the colors say.
right,
Right.
yeah.
So,
Okay.
and there's no gun to our head, this is a 9-month project.
Not a problem.
Thanks, Kevin.
I do need to table the electric distribution update. Kevin had a prior commitment. He's not able to make it, so we'll push that to the next meeting. The next item is we would like to add additional licenses to our planning system. This allows folks to log in and complete inspections and function within the system. It's something we've discussed for a while, but we've gotten to the point now where we have to kick people off the license to add people. So we feel now is the time to go ahead and add some additional licenses for $12,750.
I'll make a motion to approve the purchase of an additional 5 licensed users for Energov and GIS in an amount not to exceed $12,750.
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Crimmins, second by Ms. Claus, all in favor, raise your right hand. Aye. None opposed, carried.
Thank you. The next item, so for as long as I've been here, we've had a lot of requests from residents on other options for internet for the town. Primarily Comcast is the majority provider. Johnson County Fiber is in some areas, of course, CenturyLink or I'm not sure the name of them now, but is also a potential provider. So we reached out to MetroNet several months ago to ask what we could do as a town to bring them to be another provider for residents. So we had a great meeting, and they went back and spoke with their folks, and they made the decision to go ahead and invest in the town. So you'll see that you've got a map here in your packet of a service area that might be broken up between a phase or two. But during this process and running the numbers and with our current ordinance, permitting is just over $17,000, and the bond that MetroNet would need to file for or take out would be a cost to them of just under $200,000. So they've reached out to ask if there's anything the town can do. So I've asked MetroNet to come tonight or today. So Mr. Stacy Jenkins, who's their Senior Vice President of Outside Plant Construction, is here to talk to you about what they've done in other cities and towns and maybe some of the fees that they've seen with some of our neighbors, and see if there's anything that the council is willing to do to allow them to provide service to the town.
All right, good afternoon. Thank you for allowing us to spend a little bit of time to talk to you about what our plans are, what we do as a company in building out communities like Barbersville, our interest in being here, and then a couple of things that we'd like to discuss with you that work very well for the community during the normal times, people expanding facilities and building new additions and what have you. But when it turns into a larger scale like what we're talking about, which is 100% new infrastructure for us, some of the ordinances that we run into in some of the communities aren't really quite tuned for that. So that's one of the things that we really wanted to talk with you about today. So, and then I could answer any other questions you got about our process, what you think, any questions that you have about how length and time and all that kind of stuff. But the one, I'd say probably the principal one that we had a concern with right now is the bond structure. Right now, the ordinance, as I understand it, is it requires every street crossing that you make, and boring underneath the streets, requires a $1,000 bond. And as it turns out, if that's one or two, that's not that big of a deal. But we've got something like 196 of those that we're going to have to do. So it turns into a $200,000 bond. Now, this infrastructure, we're not just a contractor in building and then we're going to walk away from it. This is our infrastructure. We're going to be a part of your community. We're going to be here long term. What we generally wind up doing, and again with the communities, instead of having all these individual bonds, is that we put up like a $25,000 maintenance bond that'll just in perpetuity, if you will, that will continue on as we support this infrastructure and do any other kinds of expansions and those kinds of things with it, that we believe is probably a more of an adequate vehicle for what we're doing here than all of these $1,000 bonds for all the street crossings.
Is fiber pole on the fiber, is that?
Excuse me?
Is the internet pole on the fiber, is fiber on the pole?
Yes, we'll have some of it in the air, and some a substantial part. Of course, a lot of your community is new, so there's an awful lot of underground. So if there's no poles there, we don't put up poles. We will use infrastructure that's there. We have used Johnston County REMC pole lines when we built out Center Grove and did some of the stuff down south of Greenwood and what have you. So we have been on those structures as well, but there's going to be a substantial amount of underground on this one.
I might have missed it, but what was your name and what's your position?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm Stacy Jenkins. I'm the Senior VP of Outside Plant for Metronet. And I don't know how much you know about Metronet. We've built a substantial amount of gigabit city type of infrastructure in and around the Indianapolis area. Currently, we cover a substantial part of the northern part of the city, from Westfield to Zionsville, Carmel, Fishers. We're getting ready to start in Lawrence, in some of the northeast side of Indy. And then on the south side, we've done Greenwood, Whiteman, Franklin, up through the Center Grove area. As a matter of fact, our main feeder cable is right up here on Whiteland that serves the Center Grove area there.
This would be not only internet, but also TV products.
Yes, it is a. Are we on the triple play?
It's a triple play.
Okay. So we telephone, TV, and internet. Although we have found, the reason I even asked the question, because we have found that like 85% of the people that ask for our service no longer want the video. They want to just choose their own.
So you will be overlapping services for the areas that have already Comcast available there? You will
Oh,
be
yes.
overlapping services.
Yes, yeah, we overbuild whatever's here. So when we come into town, we build up and down every street. We try to touch every address. Is there anything you want
What do you anticipate as your total investment with this build out? When you're asking us to, do an eighth of the bonds that we would normally have to do for anyone else. So maybe walk us through what your total investment is and why it would appear that $200,000 bond for a company like yourself shouldn't be the end of the world. Maybe explain to us your total investment and what this build looks like.
It is, and it's just something else to maintain. Obviously, is the company capable of it? Yes, but do we generally do that? We have markets that are, obviously substantially larger than this. That we work, with that $25,000 bond. It still is an expense, and it's an annual expense. It doesn't just stop, here. It continues on. So we want to try to keep something that's a practical level. Again, we're here to sell service, so when the people buy the service, we have to maintain that infrastructure. We are going to be here. We're not building it and then we're going to be leaving. And when you have a problem, you got to try to get us back in town to fix it. So I think it's a little bit different than being a service provider as opposed to being a contractor trying to get the bond to to do a road crossing. Now, so far as what we expect to spend here, I think we're probably between $1 and $1.5 million on the initial outside plant infrastructure. It doesn't include all the optronics, all the CPE stuff that goes, the customer prim type of boxes and all those kinds of things that go in. So, just getting the conduit in place, getting the cable pulled in, getting the splicing done, getting a cabinet set, that this community will be served off of, and then connecting it back to the transport facilities that we got coming out of Center Grove is going to be, those things will be on top of the outside plant.
Will you be adding any kind of retail store or any kind of Bargersville location by doing this? Would you be bringing any jobs to our community?
At this point, I don't know, and I have my doubts because I think we already have a store down in the south part of the city. But I don't take care of that part. I take care of the construction part of it, and I kind of do the sales part of it up to the other folks. Kathy, do you have anything to provide on that?
Sure. Members of Town Council, my name is Kathy Scheller. I'm the Director of Government Relations for MetroNet. I present to a lot of councils, not only in Indiana, but across our entire footprint of 13 states. I think the number one value that we bring to communities, when I came and met with Kevin to talk about this opportunity, is competition. So whenever we come into town, competition is in place for your residents. And I know that council members that I've met with find that very important to their constituents, that they have choice. So I will say that. As far as a retail store, regardless of if there's a retail store here or not, or if it's a regional retail store, there will be jobs coming to this community. We are going to need technicians to attach to the homes. We're going to need salespeople from Bargersville to go out and talk to not only residents, but also businesses, commercial here. Our speeds, our lowest speed right now is 100 meg down, 100 meg up, so symmetrical speeds. Our largest speed right now is a gig down, a gig up. This has kind of been a game changer for the communities that we serve. And I think one of the things about this bond, when it came up and it came to my attention, was what happens is communities talk. And when we look at bonds, this is across our entire footprint, for the size of this community and for the major infrastructure build that we're providing. Other communities are going to say, well, you had a $200,000 bond in Bargersville, maybe we'll charge you $200,000 as well. And thus begins a cycle that ends up impacting our organization. But to answer your questions, I hope that helped. There will be jobs coming in. You'll see a lot of technicians working here. You'll see our trucks. We'd like to become a part of the community. I talked to Kevin about that. We like to invest. We like to become members of this community, because I believe personally it creates a win-win situation whereby your community gets to know us and we get to know your community as well.
I have a feeling that when our ordinance was drafted and adopted, that it did not address full build out for the whole town. It was probably for the here and there, boring and cutting and trenching and so forth. So
is there any precedent where we adjusted this before?
Joe, do you know if we've adjusted?
The only instance I'm aware of is we do not charge REMC
What's the request? Is that 25,000 so?
And this bond would stay in place.
Yes, perpetual.
One-time bond?
No, it's a
That's
ongoing,
okay.
it's a maintenance bond that's ongoing. Right.
So
And
we
it's keyed off of the crossings.
Crossings per lineal foot.
So,
There's actually a permit charge per crossing, per bore, and then per linear foot. It's a prorated share per mile installed. Along with the permit fee, there's a performance bond charge. On top of that, that's good until installation is finalized. And if the installer is a member of the IURC, they can present an indemnification agreement. Otherwise, they have to provide a 1-year maintenance bond on that.
You guys remember the IURC?
Matter of fact, our vice president of safety is the president of Indiana 811.
But this really is just performance, so once they complete the crossings and everything else, then the bonds would expire and we would no longer have.
Correct, yeah, we'd final inspect the project, make sure the road crossings right away were restored to grade and condition, and we bring that back to council for release.
It's not perpetual.
Yeah.
so I know there's some field down to 300. Is there a reason why 500 doesn't go all the way down to 300?
Okay. I'm sorry, what was that?
So 500 west.
Oh.
It stops, it looks like it stops probably at Deladine. I'm looking at that correctly.
So I have a question on the service areas. I'm not sure which one's best to answer.
Do you have the map there?
Yes. So she's asking, what made it stop here, basically?
I'm sure an awful lot of this, when we have people that do these studies, they're always looking for where's the groups of homes. I mean, everything about our infrastructure and all the money we spend on it is how many feet per pass, how many we have to build to get to those areas. As they build up, once we're here, we will see constant expansion projects because somebody will just have a new development to build. We'll go in there. So it'll constantly expand. This is basically general footprint to get us started in the area.
Oftentimes what's happened, if you've lived in the country, you're almost without internet most of the time.
Right.
And I think part of the thing is broadband and things as the state moves forward, so it's like, we need to look at these underserved areas a little bit closer.
Yeah, exactly. And I could actually use Burgersville as the example when we were building Center Road before. We were trying to.
So when you say Center Grove, what are you talking about? Center
Oh,
Grove?
I guess that's unincorporated area, right?
Oh, the unincorporated.
It's all from Whiteland north to county line. We have built that area pretty much 100%. There are a few areas that just had some acreages on them, but once again, cost per pass, that we get into. But between 37 and 135, and then of course we go east of 135, we go clear across Greenwood as well. But basically from County Line Road, we do have some that's built north of County Line Road, but from Morgantown over to 65. There's a band up there that we've also built. And we can, we're constantly expanding. Again, when we've started off building Franklin, and then we built Whiteland because it was the next one north, and then we went in and built, Greenwood under an agreement with the city. So we just, and we intend to continue to expand. We've like, as I said, we've been in around a number of the communities in and around the area. And once we're here, as you grow, we grow with you. So, but I will agree with you. It is very hard to serve a rural area where you have, a home. Hopefully that's maybe what some of the federal funds are going to help out with on getting those ones that, we got one home for half mile,
So are you north of Whiteland Road on the west side of 135 then?
Yes,
And you've activated that?
Oh, yes, that's all been in, gosh, we built that probably 4 years ago.
There might be some others.
That's the reason when you guys were talking about Smith Valley, I was going, well, that's right in the middle of all that stuff that we built up in that area.
So are your technicians and people that bore, I don't know what the
Yeah.
the word is for that?
The construction crews, yeah.
Construction crew, do you subcontract that out or?
Yes, we do, yeah.
Okay.
That's a good question. We have, a number of contractors we work with that actually do the installation of the existing, the initial conduit systems and what have you.
Right.
We have outside plant engineers that work with those people, that monitor them, make sure that they're doing the work the way that it should be done.
So
We
if
understand
gas
this is,
line's cut or something's cut, that goes back on you then?
excuse me. You said what?
Like if a gas line's cut or a water line's cut and.
Yeah, I mean, we also, then those kinds of things do happen, as much as you try to avoid them. But yes, we make sure that those are all taken care of. I will also say other things that people are concerned about is if we hit their invisible dog fence, or their sprinkler system in their yard and what have you. We actually have a 4-step process. I don't know if we've ever gone through that discussion with y'all, but we have a communication process we try to work with the community on. So we send out letters like a month before we're going to go into a neighborhood to everybody in that neighborhood that explains who we are, what we're doing, what a utility easement is, why we have the rights to be there, what the impact is that they can expect, alerts them to things like things that they have that are private utilities, such as the underground dog fences and those types of things. Offers, that if they can, give us a call, we'd be glad to bring out flags that they can mark any heads on sprinkler systems or give us any ideas they've got about, their dog fences and what have you. Then after that, about 14 days after that, just for the person that does like most of us do, puts it in the round file, you never read the letter. We send out a postcard that says the same thing, construction company. And then we have the third iteration, about 10 days before we get ready to start, we have a group of people go out and actually put in what I'm going to call like lawn darts, but they're just like little signs that we put in out at the end of the driveway, by the mailbox, someplace that people tend to go and read those signs. It says, we're coming through. And then, of course, shortly after that, they start seeing all of the flags and the paint and all that as all the utilities get located out there. And then our crews come through. And when our crews hit the job, they're supposed to actually walk up and notify people that we're going to be there tomorrow. So they have the foreman comes out ahead of them. If they can't reach anybody at the house when they come by, they have another sticker that we put on the garage door, which basically says, sorry, we missed you. Explains again that we're going to be in here tomorrow. If it's in a rear yard, if you have any gates, could you please leave them unlocked, keep pets, put away while we, get the facility put in and what have you.
And, I just want to interject. We have an extensive construction communication plan. There's a website. All you have to type in is Metronet Construction. You'll see all the communities we're in Indiana. People can go onto that website, take pictures, photographs, ask about restoration if they have any issues. Our goal is to take all the calls away from town hall and send it to Metronet. I've been here 7 years. We've really come a long way with that because of the incredible growth that we have seen over the past 7 years that I've been here. But it's a great tool that once that we come into a town, we work with staff to make sure that the residents have access to that. But as videos on the process and all of these letters that Stacy was mentioning are directing people to that website or the Metronet 800 number.
So Kevin, soup to nuts here, what's the difference between the $25,000, $200,000 that we're not going to receive any premiums from or anything that they just have to pay premium on?
Personally, I don't have any objection to the $25,000 bond.
But what's soup to nuts? What's the difference between them having $25,000 and the $200,000 bond? How does that cover the town if something occurs?
If they go out of business and don't finish the project, we have to do it. Or one of these borings or cross.
We don't have to finish Metronet's project if they do stuff on it.
Well, I'm saying if they don't finish the project, or is there any liability there that we have to come out and do?
Basically, the bond requirement is if the restoration is done as far as the boreholes and handholds and things like that, in people's yards. It also covers the road cuts, so the asphalt in the road, as well as the road bores if they want it properly done, and the road were to sink in that area.
So right now it's $1,000 per road.
Exactly.
I'm just trying to hammer this down, so, because the way I look at it is competition. So it's when I call Comcast and say, hey, MetroNet's out here, they're gonna be this, and Comcast goes, oh, well, then I'm gonna go this, and I'm gonna go to MetroNet, and now Comcast, that's great, so what is this bond gonna cover for us?
It is $3,000 per road cut, so open cut of the road. So $1,000 per bore.
Okay, $1,000, and you're not doing many open road cuts?
No.
And so $1,000 per bore.
Then is $10,000 per mile of insulation parallel to right of way.
Okay.
So if $10,000 per mile or prorated.
So if they have a $25,000 bond that we generally have a $1,000 bond on, they're probably not gonna be boring at 50 or 75 locations at once, I'm assuming.
Typically, we'll see, the largest we'll see is sections of subdivisions.
Right.
So you may see a dozen.
Okay, so it doesn't. So if we were generally, if it's only bore, and we're generally looking at 1,000 a bore, and it's 12 going at a time, we're covered. So that's where.
Yeah, my opinion is, let's say they start in 3-notch and they start on 10 or 12 bores, and staff or inspectors realize there may be an issue or one of their subcontractors is not performing. And so MetroNet is pulling this permit, and these subs are working underneath MetroNet. So if we see an issue, then we can pull their permit, stop things, and have a meeting to figure things out before our exposure gets too big and we've got 100 bores out there now that we've got to fix. So
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd be okay if it was 50 and there was a cap on how many bores they could do at any one given time.
You wanna do 50 and cap
And
it
just say
20?
cap it, you can only do 25 bores maximum at any one given time, and then work their way through it. And the other thing I'm worried about is the precedent of,
I completely understand that.
I don't know how many of these we're gonna see once we do this. I don't know that we're gonna wind up with 5 other competitors trying to come in here, but I know that if I don't vote for this, I bet you everyone in my neighborhood will come and say, you love Comcast and I hate you. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we need competition, we need more fiber and internet providers in our community. We're a growing community, so I'd like to see us work this out. But I also don't want to set a precedent that's gonna invite everyone coming in and asking for, every time they want a road cut. Well, they got this, I want this. That's not their fault, but that's.
Right, and we can basically term this as, a $1,000 per bore, because they're not doing road cuts. So it's, road cuts a little bit different, there's a little bit more involved in that.
Talking about.
Yeah. And you don't anticipate road cuts?
No, the only thing we would open up any roads for, we wouldn't open it up. It would be the corridor we're gonna locate if there was a utility underneath there that we had a concern that we would get.
Okay.
So if we had like something like a gas line or something, generally not for like water lines and sewers, because water lines are gonna be deeper than we are. Our standard is between 18 and 24 inches. So we'll be able to go over the top of those. But the only time you would see is, do any kind of a road opening would be a corridor rail to expose utility.
Old Town, and Kevin can attest that, is gonna be sewers and issues like that.
So you probably should start on 500.
From a fiber perspective, we are utilizing their services at our water somewhere. I know
numerous
we looked for
facilities, right? A few of our water towers have MetroNet service, and one thing with Old Town is it's all overhead electric, so I would imagine a lot of their build out here will be up in the air.
That's good, and it won't be that boring.
Yeah, we try not to bore if we don't have to, if there's an existing pole line there.
So what would to do this project, what's the time frame on something like that?
I'd like to have it done by the middle of next year, weather permitting. If we get a really, we will work right through the winter if we can. So, and we are prepared to get started, as quickly as we can get all the rest of the ducks in a row and they get the crews in here. We build fairly fast. We do bring a lot of crews in. We tend to, we basically we know it's kind of an invasive type of process. So we try to get in, do very good, get out fast. Our architecture doesn't require us. I'm sure you guys have seen some stuff in, other parts of the metropolitan area where they had these big pits and opened up for months on end and all of that kind of stuff. We don't require that. We put all of our stuff in, set our handholds, set our flower pots, and all those types of things. As a matter of fact, all of our stuff is subsurface. So you won't see any pedestals around town with any of our stuff. But we put it all in. We try to get it all put back within 48 hours of opening it up. Get seed put down, get straw put down. In the wintertime, understanding that some of this stuff is not going to grow in the spring, we generally keep track of what we've done, and then we'll come back in April, May of the following year and reseed and restraw any areas that haven't started growing. So we basically take care of any of the winter work, in the first part of spring.
So Kevin, is this a performance or maintenance one? I think it's performance, right?
Yeah.
Because on the thing here says maintenance.
Yeah, it's performance.
Okay, so I'm gonna make a motion to approve, the performance bond for MetroNet in the amount of $50,000, not to exceed 25 bores at one time during the construction build-out phase.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Mr. Noel, second by Mr. Gainer. All in favor, raise your right hand, say aye. Aye. The motion carries.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Did we get started back on
The next item is with the new police station there at Morgantown and Whiteland Road. Typically on commercial projects, when the decel or accel lanes are over the water main, we require the water main to be relocated. The 6-inch main that is on Morgantown Road is fairly old. We prefer not to disturb it, and it is part of our construction requirements. So it's only council that can waive that construction requirement from relocating that 6-inch main due to the police department construction. So
I'll make a motion to waive the construction standards for the water main under Morgantown Road as a part of the police station construction.
I'll second.
The motion by Mr. Brown, second by Ms. Qualls. All in favor, raise your right hand. Say aye. Motion carries, none opposed.
the next item is our Baldwin Street Light Improvement Project, and I may need to table this. I need to table this item to another meeting, so.
Okay, table. Okay.
Last is our Travis Road Force Main project. So when we approved this project, initially, we knew that we were gonna have to come back with a change order for the last leg of it to the Morgan County treatment plant. So Andrew Gordon is here from Wessler Engineering to kind of explain this with council and hopefully we can get this approved.
Okay, that's fine. Good afternoon, everybody. So as Kevin mentioned, we are in the process of adding the last segment to the Travis Road Force Main, which includes, if you're familiar, east or west of Old 37 is the Waverly Wastewater Treatment Plant. There's an access road off of that to the west that takes you over to where the old quarry is. There's an old quarry down that way. This last segment of Force Main is going to go down basically into the quarry and connect at the Waverly Wastewater Treatment Plant. There's going to be a vault set there. It's going to have a meter inside of it. It's going to monitor the flows that the town will end up being charged for. So this change order is actually being presented to the council. The change order is from Infrastructure Systems Incorporated, who is the contractor for the currently ongoing project that the town has with Infrastructure Systems. This change order in the amount of $83,190 adds additional length to both a 2-inch force main and a 10-inch force main. The 2-inch is for low flows initially that will be sent to the Waverly plant. The 10-inch will be for future and more substantial flows. It'll also include the meter vault at the bottom of the hill, as well as some relocation of some of the existing fencing, security fencing that's around the Waverly plant.
This is the tank that we thought we were gonna have to do. No, this is separate, okay, so. You know what I'm talking about. Okay.
So it's 83,190?
$83,190. There is
90,000. It's for Kevin, Andrew, not.
that's okay.
I may have done that so I look good at the meeting.
It didn't work.
Under asking.
Westler has reviewed the costs from a industry and material standpoint right now, and the costs are reasonable from this contract.
I'll make a motion to approve the change order for the sanitary force main for the amount not to exceed $83,190.
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Cooper and Ms. Pauls. All in favor, raise your right hand. Say aye. None opposed. Carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, it's cleared out in here, so I don't think I have anything else left on the agenda. Any questions?
Need to have you first.
Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate it.
Santa train?
Yes.
Sand train,
Friday?
4 o'clock Friday.
Friday
There, Square.
Are you the same?
I am not the
Okay.
same, but I will be there, hopefully.
Yeah, cookies stuff.
There's cookies Thursday.
Yes. Okay.
I think that's the only announcement.
Anything else? We appreciate it. So,
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.